Hey guys, Monster Master Arthur here, and in this video I have composed different snippets from my interview with Christopher Stoll, where we discuss different monster topics. We're just talking monsters, and at the beginning also we mention his book, which is A Natural History of the Fantastic, which is a new book that he's working on. It's on Kickstarter currently, so do check it out as well. Hope you enjoy the show. Let me know what you guys think. Have Christopher Stoll here. That's right. And he's going to be talking, we're going to be talking about his new project, which is just making noise, and it's getting a lot of people excited. So without further ado, let's go and get started. If you guys don't know, well, obviously you will know as these pictures appear in front of us, but this book is about basically monsters, creatures of myth and legend, and the anatomical structures and explaining how they work inside and out, which I think it's about time somebody created a book like that.
It reads a little bit like Darwin's Journals meets a D&D monster manual, exploring the ins and outs of these creatures, their habitats, and it's also accompanied with a sort of a rich collection of first-hand accounts and stories by explorers and soldiers and sailors who inhabit this world and live alongside these creatures. So, Arthur, I have a question for you. What is your favorite monster, and does it appear in the Kickstarter book?
That's an excellent question. Well, you know, it's like asking you which child do you prefer more, your daughter or your son? That's tough. I have my preferences. I've been into dragons quite a bit when I was younger. I think maybe like you, I was into them so hard where I kind of overloaded it, so now I'm kind of like into other things. Trolls, the Minotaur. I have to say I like trolls because of the variations, how many different shapes and sizes of trolls you can get.
So we have trolls and minotaurs in the book.
Yep.
So hopefully you'll get your fill.
That's right, I saw that. I saw the Minotaur there and the troll, and also you got me, as I mentioned earlier, was that Kappa, and what else? Also your undead. I forgot what it's called. A flesh-eating fiend, I think?
The Flesh Fiend.
Yes, the Flesh Fiend. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That reminded me of... I forgot the race's name, but there's an old mythological race of humanoid monsters where they have kind of their faces on their bodies and they have no separate head. And that's what it kind of reminded me of. What else? You've even got the worm. Worm as in W-U-R-M, which is like a snake dragon, kind of. It's a legless dragon, almost, at times. Well, it depends. Worms take on all different features. Speaking of that, my honorable mention for your artwork, I love a lot of it, but I had to pick out one and kind of give it an honorable mention, and that is your fungal priest.
That's a big fan favorite.
Oh, awesome. So let's test your knowledge on the anatomy now. How do dragons have the ability to breathe fire, or to blow fire out?
An excellent question. This is an oldie but a goodie. I have seen this idea kicked around in a couple different places, and it reemerges here for the book. Dragons work quite a bit like hydrogen blimps, and basically they have a tremendous repository of hydrogen gas in their chests. And without going too deep into the biology on the podcast, they are able to expel that hydrogen storage, which is the source for both their flight and fire, and ignite it with an apparatus in their throat. So it's a fight and flight.
Okay. How does that apparatus work? Is it some kind of grinding mechanism to make sparks?
Precisely. It's got essentially at the point of connection where you would see the larynx or the vocal cords in a human, there's two pieces of rough tissue that can strike almost like a flint.
Excellent. All right. I like that. Okay. What is your favorite monster?
Mermaids are up there. I've always found the idea of sea creatures especially really exciting. So mermaids and siren have always really fascinated me. The idea of being like a primitive sailor out in the deep ocean and encountering something like that so wholly alien really intrigues me.
Right.
So that would be up there. Dragons also top choice, but I'm going to go with mermaids.
Okay. What would you consider the most annoying monster?
I'd say it'd have to be goblins or fairies.
Okay.
They both have mischievous streaks.
Right. All right.
So in this book, my goblins are more like hyena, like pack hunters almost. But I see that trope recurring a lot.
Sure. What do you consider the most overrated monster? And now we're talking about more of the pop culture, like the monster that's just too common in movies and all over the place.
It would have to be vampires. Vampire, even like Twilight is like a decade behind us at this point, but still, it has such a tremendous effect on the popular culture. Vampires, definitely overdone. I don't know if you'd call witches monsters. I've seen some monstrous interpretations. I'd say they're also overdone.
Right.
In terms of video games or tabletop games, you see a lot of goblins. I think they're sort of a stock character. They don't frighten or impress anymore. They're just the lower level mook that you get to cut through to get to your treasure. And that's disappointing because I think every monster has the capacity to be engaging or scary if it's handled well.
And there's so much variety, there's so many types that you can always, replace them. Why do you always have a goblin finally, protecting that? I mean, we can have a kobold or, something else. There's so many types out there.
Or a mushroom man.
There you go. Mushroom man. How about that? Just coming out of the ground or something. No, that's a good answer. I didn't even think about the answer for that myself, but I'd have to agree with you. As of late, probably it would have to be vampires. Yeah. And what do you consider the most deadly, the most dangerous or powerful creature out there? If we can still call it a creature.
Dragons are certainly dangerous, but in this case, I'm going to have to go with something sentient, something that can reason and plan. Oh, that's such a hard question. I'd have to go with like a manticore, or maybe even the centaurs in my book are pretty intimidating. So I might go with that. They're very aggressive.
Interesting. Okay. Right. It's a mix of now...
unbridled. In the pop culture, it might be something supernatural, like a demon. I see a lot of scary demonic movies, demonic possessions, that sort of thing, and that doesn't really show up in my project so much. It trends a little too much towards the supernatural.
Right.
Oh, such a hard question. What would you say is the most terrifying or deadly monster in your opinion?
See, that comes down to what do you consider a monster, because when I like to talk about monsters, I like to cover anything that's living, scary or not, that's living and not something we know now, like animals and humans. So I would put, like you said, witches into the same scape, and I would even put gods and, celestial beings into it. So I would probably even go as that far into beings that, are in control of time and space, something like that. I mean, I'm going pretty far here as Marvel would. Even if you look into the world of Marvel, they have all these celestial beings, so...
It's like an existential terror almost.
Exactly.
Like, oh my goodness,
exactly.
Our lives are so pitiful in relation to these monsters.
Exactly. I mean, you could...
That feeling of smallness.
Yeah, you could imagine like a Titan, but that's still like in this realm and dealing with this gravity. But what about beyond a Titan? Beyond, the 3-dimension, things like that. So maybe I just have too much time.
Trans-dimensional.
Right.
No, it's fantastic. I love cosmic horror.
Right. Yeah, and that's why I put gods and goddesses into play too, and some people might get offended, but that's why I explained that the term monster, it's very generalized, People can use it as just something scary, but fairies aren't scary, at least not a lot of them. And then, a lot of them are humanoids, so can we add dwarves and elves and all that? That depends, but I like to keep it pretty open.
I guess you can ask what makes a monster.
Exactly.
If you go far enough back in the myth, like into these earlier pre-industrial stories, the line between gods and monsters is often blurred. Even in the monotheistic religions, like the old Jewish texts, like the Book of Enoch, you'll see sort of this blurring of lines, the descriptions of angels walking the earth.
Right.
And it's terrifying stuff. Did you see that movie Noah?
Some of it. Some of it.
Some of it? It had its interpretation of angels was very monster-like in an interesting way. I thought it was a peculiar interpretation,
right,
but very much blurred that line between celestial being and earthbound monstrosity.
Right. Well, yeah, and then you go into the extraterrestrial, and the crossing between aliens and gods, and then aliens. Even in our own history, how people consider the possible past as aliens being the angels and such crossings. So, therefore, I just consider a monster anything that we haven't discovered that's living in some way, even if it's undead. What monster would you like to have as a pet?
Assuming that it wouldn't, immediately kill and eat me.
Right.
Yeah. I think it would be fantastic fun to ride on top of those worms, the WURMS worms. Just like in Dune.
Right.
King of the world. I think that would be a nice way of getting around. It certainly beat the bus.
Plus, you'd have that underground network to play around in and discover, too, now.
Yeah, giant subterranean castle.
That is a cool answer. I wasn't expecting that. I figure people would usually say, unicorn or, a dragon or something, but I like that.
Okay. The dragon's up there, but...
what monster would you consider the most scary?
I find the undead pretty scary, in general.
Sure.
Always had a weakness for zombie movies, and my interpretation is just all gnashing teeth and indomitable hunger, and that is spooky to me. So that sort of mindless ruthlessness, the almost Terminator-like way that it pursues, and not tiring or needing any of our sort of human weaknesses, that is pretty scary to me.
Right. I
think it's got to be undead.
Just having one purpose in mind, and it will stop at nothing to get there.
This just keep coming.
Speaking of which, what special monster movie do you have out there?
Recently, I just watched one called It Follows. It was spectacularly creepy. It's about, without spoiling anything, this invisible beast that stalks a single person down and kills them, and then kills the last person they had contact with. And it is like a transferable monster, almost like a disease. So you can pass it along, but you know that whoever you pass it to will eventually die, get killed by the beast, and then it'll come back after you. So it's hunting its way down this chain of interactions, trying to kill the source. And it's just an interesting story. Between that and a South Korean film called The Host, I'd say those are up there in terms of favorite monster movies. Okay, I'll have to check. Do you have any favorites of your own?
Quite a few. I guess it depends which monster we're talking about. Like for Dragon, I have maybe Dragonheart. I enjoyed that. Zombies, I like a lot of zombie stuff. Yeah, zombies. I like also the older one, Night of the Living Dead, the colored version. One movie, as far as more horror goes and featuring a lot of different types, and a more unknown movie is Waxworks. I haven't seen it in a while, so it might not be as cool as I remember, but it was a wax museum, and then all those creatures come to life.
That sounds really cool. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah. Hopefully it's as cool as I can remember it. So I'm going to have to check it out soon.
It's such a hard question. There are so many different monsters.
Exactly.
And so many different variations of all the different existing varieties of monsters. Are we talking kaiju movies like Pacific Rim and Godzilla? Is it horror undead movies? Is it fantasy adventure movies? There's so many varieties.
That's right.
But you had great answers. I love Dragonheart.
Yeah, beautiful ending.
Sean Connery. as a dragon.
Exceptional.
It's trippy, but it's so great.
Agreed.
Look to the stars, Bowen.
Yeah. Oh. I'm going to have to watch that again, maybe tonight. I have to give props to the new Wolfman, too. I really like what they did with that, and the actors they put in the movie. Have you seen that one?
Actually, I haven't, but I've seen the original, and where it sets all the rules for Wolfman.
Right.
Yeah. And American Werewolf in London, another great film in that genre.
Okay, now quick answers here.
Rapid fire.
Yes, rapid fire on monster battles. I got 3 for you, because we could continue this forever. Right. So,
I'd love to.
Maybe, yeah. Okay. Here we go. Let's focus. Giant versus Cyclops. What do you think?
Gotta go with Giant. I feel like Cyclopses have a big, vulnerable eye. It's gotta be a disadvantage if you're grappling around with something your same size.
Yeah. I've got to say, that sounded so metaphorical, but yes, literally, they just have that giant eye.
Giant
All right, Minotaur or Ogre?
I tend to think Minotaurs are smarter, and maybe they could use those horns tactically. So I'm going to go with the Minotaur.
Cool.
At the very least, it would depend on the environment. Rocky hillside, got to go with the Ogre.
Okay.
If it's a labyrinth, got to go with the Minotaur.
Okay, fair enough. So either way, it's a good battle. Hellhound or Centaur? That's a little bit of a weirder match.
It's tricky. Like, I tend to side with the smarter monster, but in this case, I'm going to have to go with the Hellhound. I think it would take out a lone Centaur. Maybe the battlefield would be a little more even if there was a bow and arrow or like a short spear in the mix, but Hellhounds, man.
Okay.
Pretty vicious.
Agreed, yep. Powerful creature. All right, as I said, we could go on this forever, and maybe later we will in another episode. But for now, go check out his Kickstarter for A Natural History of the Fantastic. Hopefully, someday we could even collaborate on a book. I would think that'd be pretty awesome if you'd be up for it.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to the next installment in the series. We'll see how this one goes.
Awesome. All right.